Welcome to another episode of the Awakener podcast, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Awakener. Before we begin, once again, go to theawakener.ca. Something devious is going on, and we have been all over it for the past, how many years now, Insider? It's been quite a few.
Oh, longer than I've been around.
Yeah, so something crazy is going on. We kind of have an idea of what it is. So you can view our opinions on theawakener.ca. We'll guide you through it. Basically, there's a global communist conspiracy. They want to conquer us, put in worldwide communism, and they're all going to fail. It's going to be amazing to watch what happens. So before we begin, the Insider's with me. The Insider is actually an insider, believe it or not, of a political party here in Canada. We have breaking news, all kinds of information that comes out on this podcast about what is happening, what Justin Trudeau is planning. Actually, we've predicted some of his latest moves. It's been really interesting to see. So before we begin, I just want to say that Canada is clearly at war with each other. Not you and me. It's not about us. The people who control our government are at war with each other. CSIS is now at war with the RCMP. There's all this information leaking about these Chinese investigations, and the RCMP is trying to cover up its tracks. And we speculate on this podcast that maybe the RCMP has been doing some pretty devious things internally. We speculated about the Danforth shooting. We speculated about that other guy. What's that? He had that ex-Mountie card. Do you remember his name, Insider? I don't remember his name. So much stuff that has happened. What are your latest thoughts, Insider?
Well, we see a lot of what's going on. CSIS has come out. So CSIS, let's put it this way: CSIS is like our CIA, whereas RCMP is like the FBI. But in our case, the RCMP seems to be infiltrated, and CSIS seems to be a little bit more genuine. And there are intelligence service. And they're coming out and they're saying that there's issues of election interference directly from communist China that have interfered in our elections in 2019 and 2021. Remember, we have a minority government, so we can have an election at any time right now. So China has basically done a lot of things in infiltrating candidates that they like, getting rid of candidates that they don't like, funding money to candidates that support communist China. And all this information was forwarded to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister pretends that he didn't know any of this information at all.
Racist to think so. It's racist.
Right. It's racist. It's terrible. And so he tried to get a third party to investigate what was going on. And that third party happens to be a person that was on the board of the Trudeau Foundation. Now, when that came out and everyone said that this is a conflict of interest, he said, I'm going to send it back to the committee and let the committee investigate it. But when the committee was trying to investigate it, they tried to get his chief of staff, Katie Telford, to come in and sit down because she's the knowledgeable person on this. The Liberals, the Trudeau party, blocked and filibustered the committee meeting for hours, blocking any kind of a vote to bring her in as a special witness. So clearly they have something to hide, and they clearly know that she has information that she doesn't want to release.
Well, not to mention, we know there's something to hide because Trudeau is passing almost Chinese-style government on Canada. Okay, we'll start with censorship, net censorship, television censorship, all kinds of controls when it comes to like digital IDs, all this stuff that relates to the WEF, which is passing worldwide communism that we've talked about. It's almost like they're setting something up in advance of a major crisis that is about to happen, where this kind of government style can take over and then control after this happens. I think Trudeau is on his way out. Now, do you speculate that this is, okay, we've talked about this on this podcast for quite some time, Insider, but I guess you and me both speculate that this kind of is happened because of investigations in the U.S. that have started a couple years ago or a few years ago, right?
Right. I think that's a trickle down, and it affects Canada and many other countries as well.
And then it's spreading, right? So this initial investigation has then spread to numerous other things. And we're probably going to see it actually in other countries in Europe, Australia, New Zealand, stuff like that. Canada isn't alone in this matter. Right. So the initial investigations were probably, let's say, Patrick Ho, Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, and now it's spreading to other governments. Now, how... what do you think is going to happen? What do you think the RCMP, like, I see the commissioner has been She's resigning. I guess she's retiring. Right. We've also noticed that Trudeau's buying F-35 fighters, which he promised to a long time ago to cancel, that has nothing to do with them. So we have speculated on this show that this investigation has been going on for quite some time, and there's been pressure on our politicians that are trying to enact this agenda, and it's forcing them to do things that maybe they don't want to do. Do you want to kind of rebate what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. We can see that there's stuff going on here in Canada. Back to what we were talking about with China. I mean, there's issues of Chinese police stations right here in Canada in multiple cities. That information came out. That's trying to be refuted by the Chinese government and their sleeper cells here in our country. The politicians are, running for cover. A lot of these liberals, we're seeing a recent one who was a leadership contender, Marc Garneau, who was Canada's astronaut in space, has resigned. He has resigned his position as a member of parliament. And then there's another one, John McKay, who clearly is saying that what's going on with the liberals and the Chinese intervention is something, incredible and something that discredits the Trudeau brand. So some of them are running for cover. They see that something is going to happen sometime soon.
Freeland, we talked about last show. Freeland was talking about throwing a couple people under the bus in the latest news articles. So I imagine that there's a lot of pressure on them right now. I think that they're in the hot seat. They don't know what to do. They don't know what side to take. I don't like it's there's a lot that we can't speculate on because we don't know, right?
Sure, of course. I mean, what goes on behind closed doors, it's hard to tell.
It's very hard to tell. And I think there's been pressure on Trudeau, Freeland. They want to enact an agenda. They're trying to enact an agenda for their masters of their control. But at the same time, they're stuck in a pickle, which is they don't want to do anything that I would say is openly treasonous. And this is why maybe Trudeau has been forced to buy the F-35 fighters, or maybe he was told to or pressured to by an inside source, because it makes absolutely no sense that he would do this unless he was under direct coercion to do so. Right. Now, I don't know what the latest, like, we can speculate what's going to happen in the news, but we don't know. But I really think that there's all this, you can feel the waves that are happening, all these investigations that are happening. And it's almost like this one major indictment is going to be kind of the whole confirmation of something is truly wrong, which is Hunter Biden. And this shockwave is going to ripple and change everything. So knowing this, what do you think Trudeau's next move is? What do you think he's going to do? What do you think Freeland's going to do? What are your inside thoughts?
Well, I think Trudeau and Freeland, for sure, we know that they are students of George Soros and they're puppets of the World Economic Forum. They're very celebrated by that person and by that organization. So I think Trudeau is trying to hide the evidence against him that kept him in power all this time, and with respect to election interference. And he also is, trying to push ahead these censorship bills and reducing guns and taking away people's guns and things like that, that he's trying to push ahead this agenda that his puppet masters are making him do, and which I believe he truly believes in. He truly believes in the socialist utopia concept of equality and all that kind of stuff. So I think he's pushing ahead, but there's limits to his power, because he does have enough votes in the parliament, but the Conservatives are really shining the spotlight on a lot of corruption and fraudulent activity that the government has done since they took power in 2015.
Now, do you think if Trudeau had won a majority at that last election, we'd be sitting in a different scenario right now?
Oh, it would be horrible. Yeah, it would. America would have the worst enemy right at their border. And Trudeau, see, it's a different system in Canada than what you have in the U.S. To the U.S. listeners, we have a system where if we elect a majority, whether it's provincial or federal, that the leader of that party is essentially elected a king for that term. Meaning, Trudeau not only picks who becomes a minister in his government, he has enough votes to pass any legislation he wants. He also picks who are going to be the judges on the Supreme Court. He also gets to pick who is going to be the Governor General, who represents the Queen. Well, in this case, now it's the King, who represents the King, who represents the monarch. Right. So he has total control over the levers of government when he has a majority. But right now he has a minority, and he's buffeted by the Socialist Party, the New Democratic Party of Canada. And they're giving him enough votes that he can have his stuff passed. But there are certain restrictions to that. Not everything can be done.
No, and you can see Singh now. I don't know if you noticed, he said, oh, something suspicious is going on too. Now, Singh is obviously a communist. He does not like Canada. He's trying to pass his socialist agenda, this communist agenda as well. But you can really see there's something going on. Okay, it's like when you're in the water and there's a shark below. And you don't want people to know that there's a shark below, but there's something really bad that's happening underneath the waves or the water, and this is affecting the way the politicians are acting, why they're throwing each other on the bus, because the investigation into Hunter Biden and Joe Biden and Patrick Cohen, all the initial investigations we talked about on this podcast, literally affects the entire free world.
Absolutely.
It is not just a tax evasion thing. It is something that or affects national security on the greatest level. And this investigation is causing so much stress and problems underneath right now that you can see that Trudeau is trying to hide. You can see that. I don't know if you saw his latest thing where he was being heckled. Everyone's heckling now. He's acting really stressed. And really, he signed his demise when he did not meet those protesters. Like the COVID was clearly the manipulation tool from the lab, which we talked about, over these investigations that were already happening, which they signaled already to do this because they had no choice. The investigations are such a monstrosity, I think, that the Western world, once we know the full extent to what is happening, there's going to be no turning back.
I agree with you, Awakener. And let's add one more thing to make the audience aware, if they're not already aware. Just last week, the House of Representatives in the U.S. voted unanimously 491 to nothing. I mean, there was abstainers, but 491 to nothing to have a full investigation in what was the intelligence that the government knew regarding the release of COVID. Did it come from a lab? They want a full investigation over that. So you can see that the house of cards is starting to fall apart.
Right. And we went in so many, there's so many layers of this onion we're talking about, and we're talking about kind of peeling these back and kind of speculating and see what's going on. So we talked about how January 6th was clearly an FBI operation. Like the QAnon Sherman was a total farce, that guy. He seemed like he was working for somebody, clearly. The Capitol Police were working for people.
Right.
The whole operation, have you ever seen the movie White House Down?
No.
So I believe it's White House Down. There's two of them that are very similar to these movies. White House Down is when there's actually an invasion on the White House to take control, where a bunch of Chinese espionage or spies and the military, secret military, pull up to D.C. to try to invade the White House to grab control. And a lot of these, you can see what's happening in D.C. right now, all these walls around the White House, the things that are happening. The reason January 6th happened was because it was an FBI operation to set up operations when a war is happening, which means that there's going to be no more insurrections. Protocols are put in place. People in D.C. are acting right now. I don't know if people can tell right now. Everyone in D.C. is acting because everyone knows what is really going on. They might not tell you. They might say this and they might say that, but everyone knows what truly is going on in D.C., but they're not telling you. But this is what it is, because there's going to be a war for control of government, we believe, when the entire truth is revealed. So this is why things have happened the way they've happened, why people are like, this is ridiculous. So on this podcast, I guess the insider and me are kind of on a different level where we're kind of analyzing what on earth is happening, why things happen the way they did. And this is kind of our conclusion. Do you kind of agree with that, Insider?
I agree with that. And actually, there was something I wanted to mention that Trump, I won't say he let slip, but Trump actually mentioned something in his speech at CPAC. But I really think this should be something we should discuss, behind the paywall.
Okay. So we're going to head behind the paywall. You can get the paywall at theawakener.ca. There's so much free material. Okay. So The Patreon is a subscribe. There's a fee to it. You get so much more inside information. It's like literally the price of an OnlyFans, except it's so much better. Don't waste your money on bikini chicks. Actually go somewhere and support a show that is telling you real information that's coming true. Let's head there now.